There's vibrant
I
downtown.
would
Open the committee meeting of Wednesday, June 7th, 2023. Thank you for attending us. We'll call this to order and we'll start. The first committee is Committee of the Whole. The first thing is the Board and Commission interview. Amy, do we have that?
We do. We have one applicant for the Civil Service Commission. It's Matthew Hathaway.
Matt, you want to come to the podium, give your name and address for the record, and give us kind of a rationale why you want to do this.
My name is Matt Hathaway. I live at 215 East Elm Street, and I really just wanted to get more involved in the community.
Are there questions? I'm going to ask a question. How do you feel you can make a difference to this committee?
I think I can make a difference in the community being a family guy, level-headed. I've got kids, so I know how to kind of deal with turmoil. Grandkids also. I think that I'm pretty just even keel, be able to hear all sides of things. I think my education here at Kent State would prepare me for this position.
Okay. Is there, Roger?
Yeah. First of all, thank you for applying.
Sure.
I really like community involvement. Civil service. Have you been part of a civil service job, or do you have some experience within that, out of curiosity?
Not within the civil service, no.
Okay. All right. So this would be a learning thing for you?
Yes, to an
basically.
extent, yes.
So you're
Eager to learn.
love it.
Coachable.
I get that.
Heidi?
Yeah, it was sort of similar to his question, but I noticed that you were a union trustee for United Steelworkers.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, my question for you was, you know, have you been involved with organized labor in any way, and you know, how do you feel about unions?
I think the unions are as good as the members. I mean, it is what they make of it. My involvement is, I've been a union member for 23 years. I think that there's good and bad both out there, but it's as good as the members.
Thank you.
Further questions?
Do you see that as being a trustee, as being a tool or that will serve you well on Civil Service Commission? Or?
Yeah, it's, I'm constantly dealing with others. There's different points of view. We have different ways of approaching things, but accomplishing the same goal. I think working well with others is a good trait. I think I have a track record of that as being a trustee.
And what other things outside of work have you done volunteer-wise, civic-oriented, if any?
My volunteer work has just been mainly like through Kent State. We've worked through Restore, Habitat for Humanity. We've done some of that. COVID really put a damper on some of that stuff, but volunteering at church, just anywhere we can, where we can do the most good.
You wouldn't have any problem being able to serve out the term?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Turner?
Yeah, I apologize first off for getting in late, not hearing you. So I may be asking a question which is redundant, but I didn't have an opportunity to hear exactly why you applied for the position on the Civil Service Board. How do you envision your involvement or input in this community and the understanding of how this board functions to actually help this community in its policies in that regard?
I think that being a member of the community, I would always put the community first, what was best for the community, and I think that doing that I couldn't, you know, I think that doing that would be best for the position. And like I I said, I just wanted to get more involved in the community, and to an extent, it is a little bit of a learning curve for me, but I believe I can do my community good.
So,
You got more?
yeah, I wanted to follow up a little bit if I could. So when you first saw that position on that board open, what came to your mind? I mean, why did you feel, with your background and everything, that this would be the area that you could help this community most in applying for that position?
Mainly because being a member of the community, I thought that I know that I can help by working well with others, and just I have a stake in it with what's best for my community.
Thank you.
Heidi?
Yeah, well, I see you live at East Elm Street.
Yes,
So, how long have you lived on Elm Street?
2.5 years.
Great, so welcome to Ward 5. I guess I didn't have the pleasure of meeting you previously.
Right.
And you've been in Kent for,
Been in Kent since 2018.
okay,
We originally rented over in the historical district, and then we had an opportunity to buy a house, so we jumped on that.
all right, well, we're historical now, too. A lot of our houses are turning 100.
Further questions?
Nope.
All right, Matt, we're going to vote at the next council meeting on 21st of June. Good luck. I'd say there's one opening, there's one applicant. If we're in Las Vegas, I think we're in good shape. So thanks for applying.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Matt.
All right, that's it for boards and commissions. The next item is City Flag Committee. Is there a spokesman for the committee? Please come to the pulpit, name and address.
Right, while this is loading, I'm John Ridinger. I am the chairman of the Flag Committee, 55 Lightning Lane in Kent. So, let's get this started here. Okay, so basically our point in coming here is that we are nearing the end of this process that started almost a year ago to give Kent a new flag. It's not necessarily, we didn't lead a contest, we didn't lead a design committee, we just led the process of giving council ultimately the community, 3 designs that our end goal here tonight is that city council has something to go forward for council meeting on the 21st. That because it would involve obviously an ordinance to establish the flag, but also an ordinance to repeal the existing flag that is still technically the flag of Kent, and also to define the flag and its symbolism. So let me just give you a quick the overview. This is stuff that we talked about last time that we presented to council, that we started with specifications, with our basic flag design that what we wanted to give out to the community. Our point in going out to the community was to solicit designs and see what was on the community's mind of what they thought of for Kent. And so we did this at the Heritage Festival. We had online postings, we had social media postings to solicit designs. We ultimately got about 68 designs and from about 35 people. And they were in various things. We kept track of that by color, we kept track of it by shape, we kept track of it by symbols. And so we determined from all this data that we collected in these designs that the most prevalent and important symbols were the Cuyahoga River, railroad, history, obviously the Tree City, Underground Railroad. The designs tended to favor, again, they looked at that simplistic, or the simple design from good flag design, and so they leaned towards a cleaner design, not something that was very complicated, which is what was specified in good flag designs. For the colors, not only did we intentionally avoid explicit color references to Kent State and Roosevelt High School, that was not favored by the data that we received from the community. And I think that's very important. We've gotten a lot of comments based on that. Not a lot, but fairly number of comments of why isn't there a tree, why isn't it red and white, why isn't it blue and gold. That's not what the community presented to us. What we discovered is that many communities like maybe Streetsboro, Stowe, Brimfield, they all have a community identity that roughly matches their high school or their school district. Kent does not really have that because we have a large Kent State community, but we also have a large Roosevelt community, and we have and then we have a third group of people that went to neither. And so having one or the other just didn't seem appropriate, and it was not reflected in the designs that were submitted. In terms of a tree or a black squirrel, we didn't want to run into any copyright issues with a logo of that type. And really they were not submitted that often. There was maybe 2 or 3 designs that had a tree and just a handful that had a black squirrel, or even a reference to a black squirrel. So these were the final that we presented to you back in March, I believe. And it was option A, option B, and option C. And again, why do they look the same? Again, it's from that data. It's from, so they're going to have commonalities with them in their color, in their design, in their layout. And all 3 of these were not just the straight designs that were presented to us and we picked them. They were tweaked, we tried different options on them, and they ultimately came to this. So these are 3 final concepts that we came up with based on all the data that we had, our own understanding of flag design, and what we were seeing in front of us. So since that point, we have had the display at the Kent Free Library. It was installed in March. If you've been there and seen it, it looks really good. We also ordered those 3 flags that are there, and in the process learned about how the flag is printed, and so we learned that maybe we need to do some more changes in the color, not necessarily the color itself, but how it's printed, and maybe some more saturation in some of the colors, because they came out a little bit more washed out than we were hoping. I and Zach visited Stanton Middle School, and we presented to the entire 6th grade during the entire day, and they all took the survey. So we had about 250 extra people that took the survey, and I can add that our 6th graders did a great job. As a longtime teacher myself, I was a little nervous about going in front of 6th grade. 6th grade can be very unpredictable, but our Kent 6th graders did a wonderful job. They were very respectful. They had a lot of really good questions. And they got a good lesson in how to give constructive, positive feedback and not be mean about it. So we also did press releases, and we did periodic things. Amy has been a huge help in getting our word out, and we really appreciate all that she's done on social media, on the message board, on the city's website. Main Street Kent passed out posters. I also interviewed with the Record Courier and with TV2 about the flag. So we definitely got the word out. Did we still have people say, man, I didn't know anything was going on? Yes, we did. As someone who works at a large stadium, in addition to my regular job, I can tell you that even when we have a bright flashing sign on the scoreboard, people ask us as if they've never heard anything that I've ever said. So here's what we got. So as the data that you're going to see in your packet is from as of May 31st. The survey is set to be live until June 14th, Flag Day. And so I checked it this morning, and we've gotten, since this was made, just 15 more responses to the survey online. And so why are we saying this? Basically, our recommendation is based on the data and based on our own understanding of it and what as we've discussed it and gone through this. But it's important to understand that if something happens in the next 2 weeks, and say we get this huge rush of survey data that completely changes everything, yes, we are certainly open to changing the recommendation, but we do not see any reason for that right now based on the trends, based on the percentages, and based on the numbers that I'm going to show you. First question was, how familiar are you with the city flag design? So you can see that we had at this point we had over 812 responses, and the vast majority were at least vaguely familiar or familiar. So you can see that it's not a lot have been heavily following it, but we still had a good that were vaguely familiar about it. But still a good chunk that the first they heard about it was either the library or from whenever they got word of the survey. This was an interesting one as well in terms of the data that we're getting, that we're basing our, that helped guide our recommendation. It didn't make our recommendation. I want that to be clear. It helped guide our recommendation. Just over half of the respondents in this question are actually, we have a resident, just over 50%, and then student, which could also, it's also basically a resident, even if it's not a legal resident, they live here. And then we had some former residents, we have people that work here. I thought it was interesting that we had about almost 6% of people that have no affiliation with Kent at all, or other. Yet they still felt, so we had 24 and 25 in those two categories, people that still felt they wanted to contribute to our flag. So they must like flags like me. So that's why it's important that when we talk about the data, that it's not necessarily like the will of the people that we're giving you here. This was an interesting one. Have you read and formed a strong understanding of the process that we followed? Most people did, but still a large chunk did not. Have you read and formed a strong understanding of the descriptions of each flag? And even though they were all available, they were all on very large, beautiful boards at the library, we still have 52 that said no. This is the one that's most important, I think, is that we have them rank their choices. So you say, which is your favorite, your second, your third. This is the one that picked this was their first favorite. Option A, which is the one that has more of like, looks like a star, that has the blue and green bars sticking out of an 8-point star, that received roughly 50% of the vote as choice number 1. And so that kind of guided that was our first guide of what this community is feeling overall, how they're viewing it, what kind of feedback is it getting. The other thing that was interesting is comments, because maybe some of you have been receiving comments about the flag. I know I have received comments from people. It was interesting because, as you know, sometimes comments we give more weight to them than we do a simple vote. And Zach Garster, who put this presentation together and has been kind of our whole artistic side here and just organized so much here. He's not able to be, he's in Phoenix right now, but he was able to pull the data from the comments and give us a little bit more, a truer insight into some of these comments. And you can see that of the 812 responses that we had by May 31st, only 38% had comments. And then he filtered out ones that had a comment, but it was like NA or some nonsense word. And it went down to 32%. So only a third of the people that actually took the survey took the time to leave any feedback on it. And so I thought that in itself was interesting. Okay, well, what did they talk about, though? Okay, so total comments. We actually had a good amount of positive comments. Did we have really negative, mean comments? We did. We had lots of comments we had a few comments about that the whole committee should be fired. So if you're paying us, I am not aware of that. We're waiting for that, but whatever. And or people just saying I don't like any of them or stuff like that. But most people gave either positive or we had. If they were negative, they were still constructive. And again, a shout out to the 6th graders. They did. I could tell that they listened when I told them how to give a negative constructive feedback, because there were several of those. And so you can see the numbers here, not only positive, but also just like raw numbers, like how many it actually was. And so even if you say, oh, it's 30%, it's only a couple dozen of people that took the time to really say something. And so what were some of the comments? We had mentions of symbols specifically, and you'll note that the black squirrel is the highest number of them, and virtually all those came from Stanton Middle School students. Again, it was very important to them, and it was exciting to me to see interest in the process from that age group. But you can see it still wasn't a large amount, and even comments about why isn't there a tree in the flag. it was only 9 comments total. And it doesn't necessarily mean it was a request for, it was just maybe why not, or another comment regarding that. And you can see the schools, the railroad, the tree, the black squirrel, and the chimney swift, or a bird. Those really didn't generate a lot of comments or even criticisms from most people that took the survey. So based on this stuff, and based on our own discussions and the whole process that we've been doing over the last year, our recommendation is going to be option A. Now, what does that mean to City Council? Ultimately, City Council has to make the decision. Ours is simply as a recommendation. And we recommend this based on it fits what we needed it to fit in terms of flag design. It fits the symbolism that we were looking for. And it was supported by the data that we were getting from the community. So it was all those factors that we needed together. It wasn't just we liked it best or the community liked it best. It fit all that stuff together. And I think that's really important. Again, this was not a contest like the flag in 1975, where they just, a group got together and they had everyone submit and they all voted on their favorite drawing. That was not what happened here. This went through several reviews and several alternates, and we tweaked it quite a bit before we came up with this final design. So from there, obviously we'll need to move forward with what City Council wants to do with that, either to accept that recommendation and vote on that at the next council meeting, or move forward with one of the other options, or even other options. But in addition to that, we also wanted to quickly go over the rollout. Once the flag is chosen and officially approved, we definitely encourage more of a rollout, because I think that was what was missing from the 1975 flag. It was approved and they made a few of them, but it was never really adopted by the city. And so that's why it disappeared. And now we have these rare instances of it. I will tell you that somebody out in the world that is into flags found that flag about it, and they made a vector image of it, and it is now on the city's Wikipedia article. So if you go to the Wikipedia article, you will see the current yellow flag in crystal clear vector format. So it is out there. But these are some ideas that we have. We also, what council need to decide, what's our role as a committee going forward? We certainly want to be part of the rolling out. Do we need to continue meeting? Do we need, what would you like the committee to do as our next step in rolling this out? Some ideas for some ideas for rolling out the Heritage Festival. Maybe do an official flag raising for the first time, using the flagpole by the gazebo or something like that. A booth, the city booth that we used for our own, when we first started it, maybe have little flags that people can get, or little paper stickers or something. There's different banners that we can do. There's different ways that this can be done. And ultimately, because the flag will be public domain, it will not be copyrighted. So the city will not have to worry about licensing, or businesses you can just go ahead and encourage local businesses, which we have many that will do this, to get merchandise that features the flag design. And we even have this, you can have forums, you can have different things. This was an example that he did. It's not real yet. And stuff like that, public art, any type of thing that's going to get the flag out. Because that was one of the comments. It's like, oh, I see this flag and I don't think of Kent. And it's like, well, of course not. You've never seen it before. Why would you think of Kent if you've never seen this before? So it's something that you have to get used to over time. The only reason we think of the United States when we see that flag is because it's been there our whole lives. It's constantly put out every time there's a patriotic event, so we associate it. And that's what we need to do moving forward. So with that, that is the basics there, and we definitely are open for questions.
Robin?
Yeah, I think it's an excellent idea to roll it out at the Heritage Festival. I think it would be probably even a better idea, not just to have the booth. You can move it there afterwards, but I think you ought to be focused on the main stage. It ought to be something that is explained to Kent residents and people who are attendees at at the event exactly why we got to where we got to, what the symbols mean, so they have an understanding and buy-in of why we decide to move down that road as opposed to going to the squirrel or Kent State colors or Roosevelt colors or whatever. Because when you explained this the first time, it moved me, and actually I'm very supportive of the one you chose. But the explanation that you gave regarding how to clean the flag up, make it about something, tell a story with the symbols on the flag, I think is the real hook. It gets people to understand what the meaning of it all is and how we kind of create that amalgam of things to make it in a clean way. So I commend you guys. Thank you very much for the job you did. And they must have thought you were counsel when they were talking about throwing you out. That's usually reserved for us. So, thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Heidi?
Yeah, I was going to say something somewhat similar. Great minds think alike, right, Robert? I'm thinking along the lines of maybe even the city booth, because we haven't really discussed it yet. We've had the city hall in the the recent years, but now people can see it being built and they can see the pictures. That could be something that would be great, to have at our city booth, and have you guys there to talk about it. And that's one thing the other thing I was going to ask you about is, I haven't seen the description of what the meaning is for a while. I guess maybe I should go to the library.
They are at the library, and I believe on the website, when you take the survey,
website.
there is a place to go to that as well.
Okay, because I like the design, but more than that, I like the process, and I really appreciate the thought that went into it and all the steps that you took to consult, to wrap the community into it, and I just think that that's what the community needs to hear now, when some of those folks are going to be hearing about this for the first time, maybe at the Heritage Festival, and how it was selected and why it was selected, and the process. So I think that could be something that we could discuss a little bit more, and hopefully some of you would be available to help us work the booth.
I'll be around.
John, I got a question, and Heidi comment reminded me of a couple of different times I was down at the library and there were people looking at them. And I really didn't tell them who I was, and I didn't care if they knew who I was, as usual. But I talked to them, and the sense they were giving me, you should look at a flag and know what it means. You shouldn't read a paragraph to know what that flag means. How do I
respond to that? I think that's easy to say when you have a well-established flag. But even look at the United States flag. How many of you really know what that symbolizes? What does the blue mean? What does the red mean? What does the white mean? We know what the 50 stars and the 13 stripes mean, but do we know the deeper? No, most people don't. There's been various associations. But if you're not from the United States, you look at that, you know it means the United States, but you might not know why it looks like that off the top of your head. And over time, it's just more of the symbolism. Chicago is a great example of this. Chicago's flag is very visible. It is all over the city, and it's highly recognizable as the city flag of Chicago. I can guarantee you that 95% of the people that are familiar with the flag of Chicago are not familiar with its symbolism at all. And it has very detailed symbolism. It has 4 six-pointed stars. Each of those stars have a point that has a symbol, each point. And so I think the basics that we're going to see I think a lot of people are used to banners and the difference between a banner and a flag. A banner does tell you everything you need to know right there. That's why it looks great behind like a desk or on a building. But a flag is more of something that sometimes you have to just recognize that you don't maybe know the full story of it right now. And the same can go with our state flag. Why does it look the way it does? But it's Ohio, and I think it's because we see it all the time. We see it in things, and so when people say you should know right away, I think what our goal is making them associate it quicker, and that's why the rollout's important. They start associating this with Kent. Yes, do I want them to know the symbolism behind it and why we got it, why it looks like that? Absolutely. But I know that there's no flag that's just simple, like it's so easy that you just know it, other than our old flag that just says City of Kent, Ohio on it, and where's the imagination, or where's the it doesn't look clean, it doesn't look professional, and that's what we're going for here. So and I will say one of the things that has been really big this whole time is that we have to understand when we're explaining the flag to anybody is that there's no design that everybody's going to like. For everyone that loves a clean, simple design, there's somebody else that loves a very complicated, very elaborate design, and vice versa. And so there's no flag that's going to satisfy everybody. But the point is that they can understand it even if they may not have picked it themselves. And I think, when I see that on all of our, the various logos and different designs that we see out in the community. So hopefully that answers your question.
Hey, does that take your time away from you? I apologize. Who's
No.
next? Gwen?
Yes.
I think you already basically answered my question, but I just want to commend you and the committee for all the hard work. I think you've been meeting since January?
We started meeting right after we were appointed in June, so
So it's
almost
been
a year.
It's been a year. It's been a year. And I know it's been a lot of meetings, and you put a lot of thought and energy and effort into it, and I really appreciate it. I think that this flag I think it's very exciting. I think that when it comes to meaning, and that was my original question about the meaning, but then your point was well made that there's lots of flags that I associate, that I have an emotional feeling about, but I don't necessarily know the meaning of it. So I'm prepared to make a motion unless anyone else has any more
Margaret
comments.
still has comment.
Then go ahead.
Yeah. John, you mentioned banners, and I'm probably an old guy like the mayor, and as I was thinking through this, as this has been unfolding, I've been keeping track of everything, and I struggled a little bit with the design, but when I see this flag as a banner, can you envision that symbolism as banners hanging down along the Main Street Bridge?
Oh, absolutely. If you look at that was the one he did.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily have to be those vertical rectangular ones. You can easily cut that out, or you can make it the shape that the flag will actually be, that double pennant shape, and it would look. I think, and that was another thing that was kind of weighed onto us as how the flag would look hung up.
Mhm.
For instance, depending on how City Hall is set up, do we want the flags on poles like that, or do we want them hung on the wall vertically, and stuff like that? And that played a role in the design, like making sure that it looked good from all angles, not just when it's flying, but also, or not just good on paper. And that's why we wanted the flags printed on as a real flag, so we could see what they look like, and people could look at them as real flags rather than concepts or flat. They look different. If you've seen them, if you've gone to the library and looked at them, they look very different in person. And the white, I will tell you that a lot of the comments about how much there's too much white space, when you actually see the flags in person, it's not what sticks out at you. But when you see it on a piece of paper that's also white, yes, that's why it looks like too much white space. But when you see it as a flag and it's not, and it's contrasting the sky, it's contrasting what's behind it, it doesn't look so much like just a blank slate.
So my last comment
Sure.
is seeing it as the banner, and seeing as all the time that the community spent in giving us input on our new city hall, I can envision that this hanging in that main atrium of our city hall, whether in banner form or in flag form. I think it makes a statement about, that's what Kent's all about, the input from the people. And I know not everyone agrees with the design of the city hall, not everyone agrees with the design of the flag. I've come to realize this is what Kent's all about. So I really commend your efforts on this, because it is unique. It is extremely unique in terms of our processes, but I think it speaks to the heart and soul of our community. So thank you for your hard work.
Thank you. And of course, I have to thank my community members who are here. They can wave their hand.
Jeff's not here, but he did all of these design presentations, which are not,
Yes.
they're very time consuming. So
Very good.
not only did we design a flag, but we designed a PowerPoint to show you everything.
Maybe,
More questions?
done, Roger?
That's all, Mr. Mayor.
Heidi, let's get John, he had, before he hasn't talked yet.
You know, all I can say is that on a scale of 1 to 10, you group of volunteers get an 11.
Yeah.
You totally have exceeded what I expected as an outcome for the study and the research and the presentation and the outcome. You did a wonderful job. Thank you.
Done, John?
Yeah.
Heidi now?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to thank the 2 members of city council that were
Yes,
liaisons. to
I
the
would as well.
committee.
Yeah.
They have been a
We
huge
just
help
pushed them
in
and
keeping
pushed
us.
them and pushed them.
They were taskmasters, is that what you're saying? You were the
Secondly, I want to say that when I look at the flag, and all 3 of them had the same, and I don't know what it's called, I call it the chimney swift tail.
I can go find them.
Yeah, the chimney
Do you,
swift
you mean
tail.
design B? That was one, number B that has a chimney.
Just all the
No.
flags.
They all have that cutout.
The chevron.
Yes.
Yeah, it's the Ohio.
Oh, the double pennant shape?
Yes, the
Oh,
double
G.
pennant. It reminds me of a chimney swift tail, and I know that it had some meaning, so when I see the flag hanging vertically as a banner, I would hope that would have that element.
And that, again, the symbolism that we give, that we've recommended, is not what council has to follow. Ultimately, council makes the final decision on what flag we choose and what it symbolizes. And so if there's question about, if there's concerns about how it's worded, or, you know, I know that there were some comments here and there about how the symbolism was worded, that can be addressed as well. And that's something that I don't think I ever thought about. Obviously, it is mimicking the shape of the Ohio flag, but there's so many other things that can be read into the various symbols that we have. And I think that's what's important, is that it can be made into something, even if people don't see it right this second, it can be something that it will be associated with over time. But it's up to us right now, after it's approved, to make sure that it gets rolled out and becomes that active part of the city's branding effectively.
Any more discussion? Robert?
Yeah, I also want to thank the mayor. He kept pushing on this flag for years. And
Ever since somebody gave it to me.
he's been working at it. And we as council,
Committee had more to do with it than I did.
yeah, well, we as council often fall backward into things, and sometimes we accidentally can discover plutonium. And that was kind of the issue with the people that we were able to appoint on this committee, that took a step forward while other people didn't move or step back. And they were, as John said, so up to the job. And we are so fortunate to be able to reach out to members of our community who have the skill and background to be able to step up, and we're confident in your abilities. And what you've done on this is just to an optimum. It's tremendous, and we are greatly appreciative of that. So thank you, all you people who participated on that.
Thank you. Jack?
Yeah, I would like to say thank you as well, but I see being a former teacher, I see a link in with the 3rd grade and the flag, and
6th grade.
3rd grade actually is the local history.
All right.
And what they'll do is they'll learn what these symbols mean. And I think that's fantastic. And so as the generation ages, people will know what the flag means and all the symbols on the flag. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any more discussion? Anybody from the audience? Seeing nothing from the audience, somebody want to make a motion where we're going to go with this? Gwen, I think you had your hand up.
Sure, I'll go ahead and, I mean, I feel like our committee members should probably make the motion.
Well, we were in a backup. We were back up in case nobody did make a motion.
Glenn, make the
Why don't
motion.
you go ahead and make the motion then?
I'd like to make a motion that we accept option A for Kent City flag.
Second.
Second by John Kuhar. Mike, is there further discussion?
No, I just say we did work hard. These people that we put on this committee are amazing. I mean, we rolled with things. You know, it's just a good group of people.
John, do you have this further discussion?
I don't think we could go wrong with any choice, but I think A would be my choice and probably was the majority of choices. So thanks for the good job and on with the flag.
Further discussion?
Don't give up the flag.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
guys.
you.
Thanks, John.
Motion to
Nice job.
Next is update of the construction of the new city administration building.
Thanks, John.
Melanie?
So Melanie, we now know we have a flag. Do we have a building to put it on?
Oh,
well,
outside the building.
I was going to say, we do have a building. It is really beginning to look like something. So I'm very excited to report that we are completing our exterior framing, and we should be completed by the 1st of July with this. We have started our interior framing. So if you're by the site or you have a chance to look into it, the entire main floor, that entrance off of Haymaker and Water Street, is completely framed in, and the council chambers are framed in, and your little dais is in, and the floor is in. The whole entire main floor, where finance is in, is completely framed out as well, and they'll be beginning, not next week, but the following week, then on the 3rd floor to finish framing all of that in. We are continuing to move forward with our HVAC equipment and starting to place some of that stuff in the ductwork up on the roof. So that is really exciting to see it start coming through. Electrical and plumbing rough-ins have started, so a lot of the conduit is being put in and established so that the runs are easier to go in. Water tap and sewer taps for the building will be completed by the end of June. So we are kind of now moving a little bit faster than we were before. I feel instead of doing 5 miles an hour, we might be up to about 30. So it is moving along. It is coming on schedule. It's actually beginning to move up a little bit. With ordering all of our materials when we did, we actually have door frames and doors that are ready to go in, although all the framing is not finished and the drywall's not up, along with some other items that are out there. So we're very, very excited. It's continuing to move forward. And what I would like to do is either at your first meeting in July or the second meeting in July, I would like for us to start a half hour to an hour earlier and actually do a walkthrough through the building. So I'll work with the mayor on that, whether that is going to be on July 5th or if we'd like to wait till 2 weeks later. So I think it'll be a great and exciting time to walk through that. See where the stairwells are, and actually begin to have an ability to look out of that top floor to see exactly the beauty of downtown Kent.
Okay. Any questions for Melanie? Mr. Kuhar?
It's kind of a strange question, but are they going to have waterless urinals in the restrooms?
I do not believe so. While we are water conscious for sure, I do not believe they will be waterless.
Well, that's surprising.
And I never know what I'm going to get. But I would like to conclude in, yes, you will have 3 flagpoles out there because we anticipated a city flag. So we will have one for the United States flag, the state of Ohio flag, and our city flag.
Yep.
Thank you, Melanie.
Thank you, Melanie.
Thank you.
Next item is, Melanie, you might as well stay up here. This is your program. The 4-day work week for Service Administration Complex, and I have no idea where you guys got this idea.
Yeah, it's the mayor.
I was going to say, it was the mayor, actually at Tom's retirement party. So I'll step back. One of the things that staff has always talked about is being able to have a longer weekend, work a longer day and have a longer weekend. But in community development, and I think in all of our departments, there's a need for all of us to be there at the same time. So we were at Tom's retirement party, and I had actually technically taken the day off, but I bought the cake, so I had to come in for that. And the mayor, I said, yeah, I'm off today. I took a vacation day. He's like, you guys should think about going to 410s. Sue did that at the hospital. Dave walked in. I hit him up.
Thank you, Mayor. There goes that.
I said, my department would love to go to 410, 7 to 5. We work with contractors. That's our primary base, so they're in there early. Sometimes they're in the parking lot waiting to pull permits. So we are doing a pilot project. It actually just started Monday. So I will tell you, I did take a nap though when I got home on Monday. I was like, oh, I'm tired. So it was it might have been because I had the Sunday scaries the night before and kept waking up. But it's gone fine. We've had no issues, and actually for us, the 3 afternoons that we've been staying until 5, we have not actually had anybody walk in the door. But utility billing and budget and finance, so the entire first floor is doing basically 4 10s. We work 7 to 5 straight through, so the doors are always open, and we're there for that time frame. And I'll let Melanie talk because her division's doing something different. I will tell you though, we used to close at 4, and often I would stay later, and I often was giving envelopes out for utility billing. So I think this will help those that come and pay between 4 and 5. So.
If I could jump in too, Rhonda asked me just to remind everybody that during COVID we basically closed the building, and people still. They have lots of ways they can pay their bills. We're not, as you might imagine, we make it as easy as we can, give you many ways as you can to submit your bill payments for utilities and stuff. So whether it's online, automatic deductions, I mean, you don't have to have a physical presence. Obviously, we still do, and we still will. Part of our willingness to do this was it really was completely non-eventful during COVID. I mean, there was no hiccups, no problems. So I joke with the mayor, but we sort of been looking at this as a way to stay competitive in the labor market, quite honestly. I think I've told you before, we're not going to be able to pay everybody as high as some cities around us. But what we have found is some cities have gone to 410s and those kind of flexible work schedules, even the remote stuff, and employees are leaving to go to those cities because of those things. We've even lost a couple people because of that. So we're trying to be as much as we can on leading edge, although this is not that new a concept. So this has kind of got multiple angles from our perspective, but a big piece is to keep us competitive by keeping and attracting the best labor we can do. So, but it doesn't fit for everybody. So.
But to piggyback on that too, with COVID, we actually went to electronic permitting. So some people still come in and get the hard permit, but we are now able to, people can submit, give us their payment information, and we email out permits. We are going to be potentially in the next year or two transitioning to a new form of the program that we use, New World for Permitting, that will allow actually people to enter their payment online like you do with a water bill. Because right now we do have to take it via a credit card or we have them mail in a check, but we'll be able to do online pay. So some of that transition to electric permitting was critical for us. And I will say, just on that retention thing, when I asked the 10 staff that work for me, not one was against it. They were thrilled. They said they would give up money if they could have a 4-day work week. So it's a real incentive for those. It's for those that have.
Did you get their names?
Yeah. Next negotiations.
So, yeah, it was. Time is valuable, and I think the older we get, the more we realize that. So anyway, just wanted to say, because he reminded me that we did move to a lot electronic. So.
And I would agree with all of their comments. Trying to retain the excellent employees that we have is very important to us, and it's a very competitive market out there, not just in dollars, but time off. So this was a good pilot for us to begin to do. Service is doing something a little bit different. We are going to remain open 5 days a week, but we are allowing some people to work 410s, which would be Monday through Thursday, and somebody else would work Tuesday through Friday for those 410s. So they've been able to work out schedules like that. Engineering is doing something just a little bit different even from that, and they're looking at 4 9s and a half a day on Friday. So the offices will always be open. Somebody will be able to do that. As our service oriented, we have to be ready for that water main break or that pothole or something of that nature. So central maintenance will continue with their regular schedule. The managers are working through that. We did offer it to central maintenance, and they have asked and requested to stay with their straight 8s. They do enough crazy other schedules, like we're doing flushing of hydrants right now. We have to do that during the night, and then snow plowing and stuff during the winter. So if they decide to change their mind, we'd certainly be able to offer them that type of a pilot as well. But we will be open 5 days a week, and somebody will always be there between basically 7:30 and 4.
Wait, this is only from Memorial Day to Labor Day, right?
We're gonna
Just a
try it out.
kind of a trial thing?
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right.
If
Are
it
there
goes
que-
well, we'll
Are there
probably be
John?
back and make it.
On the departments that are not there 5 days a week, who answers the telephone on the days that no one's there?
Well, with us, our phones always roll into, we have a building department and a community development department line. Actually, all the departments have lines. So oftentimes, if we're working with customers, that line will roll into voicemail, and that voicemail is checked on the next business day, and that automation says that. 90% of people email us, though. So COVID pushed everybody to use electronic communication. So we also will have, they'll call in, typically, we issue emergency permits retroactively. So Monday's our busiest day. There was no way that Monday was going to be a day we're not here, because your furnace goes, hot water tank, all those issues in your house, you do, and then you come in and get the permit retroactively on Monday or Tuesday. But a lot of it is work that is scheduled and planned, so we are able to permit ahead of time. So a lot of them will come in, and we don't have a lot of people that walk in. Most of the jobs are laid out jobs where there's an electrician, and they know that they're going to be working at, you know, a certain business, and they come in, and John will pull a permit knowing he's got to be there next week. So they work ahead of that because they have to calculate fees. And it's based on square footage. It's not just like the permit's $20. It is for residential, but commercial requires some calculation. We have to review and approve plans if it's a building, and private sites too. So all of that requires pre-work, and so most of people are not just walking in blind. We do have zoning permits that are issued for fences, pools, and sheds. The big time for that is March, April, May, but that is also available to you online, and that is also all on our website. So we tend to do a lot electronic. So
Nothing is worse than urgently needing the answer to a question and calling and getting a PBX Rolodex that keeps putting you to another phone line that nobody's at. It always irks me when I run into that. And maybe I'm the only person in the world that bothers, but.
Robin?
Yeah, is Rhonda here?
No.
Not tonight.
No, okay. Well, maybe somebody can answer, and maybe it was just a question. I was thinking about vacation. Once you go to 10 hours, say, do you then bump up and work on Friday? How do you adjust?
if it's a week that is not a holiday week, if it's like a 4-10 week, so let's say I was going to take a vacation day this week, which is a 4-day, 10, I need to take 10 hours. However, there are 8 weeks, isn't it 8 weeks a year that we have? 8 weeks a year where we have the federal holidays. Those revert back to 7:30 to 4, and they're 8-hour days because of union contracts and issues with the holidays. Those weeks are 8-hour days. So if you were going to, if it's like Memorial Day week, so Monday would have been a holiday, and you wanted to take Tuesday, it would have been 8 hours vacation. And that's because Suzanne and Rhonda said it would create too many issues and challenges. So for those 8 weeks, so we post signs that say, this week we're open these hours, close Monday for Memorial Day, 7:30 to 4. That's so that way, during those holiday weeks, it's 8 hours, but if it's a non-holiday week, it would be 10.
So, in other words, there are no implications on our budget regarding...
That's why Suzanne and Rhonda worked that out, because originally they were looking at that, but then because of the holidays, Suzanne kind of clarified why it needed to be that way. So it's fine. We post signs and we adjust for those weeks.
Okay.
Any other?
Just
Mr.
a-
Farrar.
I understand the 90%. What happens in the emergency when somebody calls in a crisis and, I mean, and needs something or somebody to talk to is it?
In community development, the only emergencies that we would come in, even if it's a holiday week, right? We would, the only way would be Bob, our chief building official if there's a structural damage. So if somebody drives their car into a building, I'm not making that up, that actually happens more than you would imagine. And fire will call Bob in, and Bob comes in. I am always checking my phone. I am never without my phone. So anything like that. I'm also always checking emails. But with regards to community development and issuing permitting on the private side, those tend to be either scheduled commercial projects, scheduled development projects, or if they're an emergency repair, all the contractors know that they do the repair and they get the permit retroactively. They don't call us for a permit if they're fixing a hot water tank on Saturday, even when we were working Monday through Friday. They don't. They basically come in Monday, say I was at 123 Elm, we had a busted hot water tank, they give us the information and we issue the permit retroactively, then Bob inspects after the fact. Inspections always occur after the fact, unless we're doing like a phased project, obviously like Davie, those are phased, you're doing steps to the city hall. But those are large commercial projects, so there's tends not to be emergencies. But Bob would be the only one, and I've been in this position 12 years now almost, and the only person that's had to been called in for emergency is Bob, and it's usually a fire or somebody drove into a building.
So I guess the emergency I was thinking is where somebody needs something right away, but they haven't done the proper work. Or
What do you mean?
Let's use Bliss, Kent, right? Where we need something. We need to talk to somebody today. It ultimately falls back on to the individual or the business to be properly prepared.
And we follow the Ohio Building Code, and under the Ohio Building Code, we actually have 3 business days to do an inspection. We shoot for 24-hour, but I will tell you it's 3 business days. And oftentimes, somebody will call for an inspection. They pre-schedule it because they're always optimistic. I'm going to use Bliss in that example because we had numerous times where they called, Bob went out, and they didn't even have it done. So the electrician hadn't done it, or in the case with that man-trap door that they said that they had the hardware fixed, Bob came back, he said they weren't even ready for me. So, we will schedule, but we do have 3 business days, and we do that now. When Bob's on vacation, sometimes our backup CBO isn't available to us. We use that 3 business days. Typically, though, we usually try to get it in 24. However, if they have called and then it's we call it, crying wolf, and then they do it again, we're like, you're waiting 3 business days. You better have this ready when we come or we start charging. So there really isn't an emergency. These are scheduled projects.
Okay.
With Bliss, they had plans. The contractor was telling the owner something different than what was actually happening. So.
Okay.
Any further questions? Does anybody from the audience have any comment? If not, this is only information to us. Bridget, Melanie, and Rhonda, wherever you are, I'll be cautious what I say down in Overhaul from now on.
Duly noted.
Yeah. We ran with that. Thank you.
Thank you, guys, for working that out. That's it for Committee of the Whole. Health and Public Safety, Mr. Amrine.
Yes, we have 3 items on the agenda. The first one deals with low-frequency noises.
Mr. Amrine, can I make a suggestion as chairman? I think the majority of the people in the 2 back rows are here for the item number 3.
You want to move it?
Would there be any chance of moving that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Is that fair to say you all are here mostly for that, right? Yeah.
Okay. Let's then move it to the Business District Noise, Chief Scherer.
Yeah, well, let me just, this item came up recently, I think it was Heidi's motion, and then there was a letter that council also received from a resident, so it's fairly recent, and I just want to say, we're not here tonight in any way to have any recommendations, any particular actions that we're here to suggest. We really kind of want to get a read out of council and the community for where this should go. I think it's one of those, it's sort of a example of success. And what I mean by that is, if you think back, not that long ago, the city had a bicentennial plan, and in that bicentennial plan, it had a whole section dedicated to downtown, and a whole section dedicated to vibrant, active, outdoor music events, that was really important to the community. Well, apparently we're doing it, and maybe, like anything, I guess too much of a good thing can cause some problems, and I think that's kind of what we're maybe starting to see, based on the letter versus, our downtown. We've spent, as you all know, probably $10 million to make a vibrant downtown, and we're getting there, and it's well on its way, and we're proud of it. And so I do want to frame this discussion as let's keep the big picture in mind too. Now, we certainly don't want to diminish anybody's quality of life. So if there are things that we can do, if we can figure this out, this is another one of those where we take a deep breath and think, I don't know how we fix this. It's one of those that can be challenging because one person's noise is another person's wonderful music. And so staff isn't usually sort of trained in the area of, you know, that level of discretion to be able to say, well, this music's okay, but that music's not okay. Or that noise is okay and that noise isn't okay. So I guess I would ask from everybody that we do this have this opening discussion in the spirit of, you know, figuring out as a group where we can go with this, what would best sort of fit the community as we move forward, because we've all got a lot invested in it, and I don't think any of us want to see us go backwards. So it's a big kind of getting to a couple statements that John made. It's a part of the brand, and music in particular. I know there's Chaz Madonio, and I'm not doing a plug. I get no extra money from him. He's got a book out talking about the music history of downtown Kent and what an important role it played in Kent's past and present and potentially future. So, but likewise, Bridget also says, you know, we're a community of homes and households too. So she ends up on that side, and so it's that balancing act that you're being asked to do. And I don't think we can just jump into this and know where that balancing point is right out of the gate. So I think this one's going to take some time. Hopefully not as long as the flag, but maybe. I mean, you know, it's equally as important, in my opinion, to get this right. So that's my little monologue. I apologize for that. But truthfully, I said to the chief, I don't even necessarily need a presentation from you, but maybe just to get things started, to talk about kind of how it works now, how your officers respond, and we'll see where this conversation goes.
Sure. Thank you. I appreciate the introduction there. So one of the things that I want to bring up is currently the unlawful noise ordinance that we have on the books is a very, very clear-cut noise ordinance that gives our officers a very definitive point in enforcing the law. We, generally speaking, when we view our noise ordinance, think about, you know, the house parties and things like that we deal with. And quite frankly, a lot of my career here in Kent, there's almost been an unwritten rule that downtown was kind of off limits for the noise ordinance. It's not written in the ordinance, and it is fully enforceable downtown. But we also understand some of the things that Mr. Reller said about the vibrancy of downtown and the success of the downtown businesses. So we try to take a very reasonable approach. We also understand that there is a resident and citizen side of this, that when complaints come in and people are disturbed by noise of any kind from wherever it's at, that we have an obligation to address it in some way, shape, or form. The approach that we've generally taken with our downtown businesses over the past couple of years is when we get a complaint at a business, we go to the business and we say, you know, basically we inform them of the complaint and we ask them to work with us on the issue. Sometimes that means asking a band to quiet things down a little bit. Sometimes that means asking them to take the music indoors instead of outdoors. We try to gauge that based on where the complaints are coming from and our own observations of where we can hear the noise or the music coming from. A distance away is, I guess, is a better way to say that, how far away we can hear that. And like I said, we really try to take a reasonable approach. I personally can't think of any time in my career here that I know of that we have cited a downtown business for unlawful noise. We've had to have conversations with management that we would go that route if we have to, but in essence, I can't think of any one time that we've ever taken that action. I would also go as far as to say that I don't believe it's the norm for us to get these complaints about downtown businesses. Does it happen? Yes, it does. I did a search myself with all of our noise complaints over the past almost year and a half now, year and 5 months. Now, I want to preface this by saying that depending on how calls are put into the computer-aided dispatch system, it's not fail-safe. I can't say that this is every complaint we've gotten or every phone call we've taken, but essentially, I can only find one unlawful noise call at a downtown business that we could attribute positively to that business in the last year and 5 months, from January 1st of 2022 through today. It's happened one time that we were legitimately able. Now, again, I preface that by saying that depending on how information was input into our system, it's possible that there have been a few more. But I think the point that I'm trying to make is if it was a significant problem that we were dealing with on a regular basis, I'd be able to find more than one. So I'll start off, I guess, by introducing it that way. I'm happy to answer any questions that any of you may have. Like I said, like Mr. Reller said, I'm not coming to you with a recommendation for a change. I'm coming to you saying that we have a pretty comprehensive noise ordinance as it is that's easy to enforce and allows for reasonableness and officer discretion.
John?
Well, I thought I heard you say that noise ordinance was enforceable downtown. My understanding was the commercial industrial facilities were not included in the noise ordinance.
The only exemption is city permitted events. So there's no exemption for downtown businesses to the current ordinance.
So how close are residential houses? I mean, the 2 blocks?
I mean, I guess it depends a little bit on where downtown we're speaking of. Like I said, that's one of the things we try to gauge when we get the complaint. Okay, where's the complaint coming from? How far away from the downtown area was the complaint generated from? We may drive over to that area where the complaint was generated and see how loud we can hear it. And the key is noise that is not reasonable, I guess. Once it becomes unreasonable, that's when we have to take some sort of action to go to the business and say, it's just way too loud at this point. Like I said, I think that the times we've gotten to that level have actually been somewhat few and far between, but it has happened. So, like I said, I understand the concern on both sides, and there's definitely a conversation to have.
So wouldn't you have to, in order to make that assumption, have some type of a documented point of noise, like say, after 1,000 feet at midnight, it can't be a higher decimal than normal conversation, or, I mean, you've got to have some type of a straight line to go by.
So currently what our noise ordinance essentially says is, in the enumerated section of unlawful noise essentially is, if we can hear noise beyond the property line of the structure generating the noise, it violates our noise ordinance after 9 o'clock at night. That does exist in our ordinance.
That's crazy downtown.
Right, and that's the point here, and that's where we try to approach it with discretion and reasonableness. I think it's important in that conversation to note the time of day first off. I don't think, generally when we're getting these complaints and when we've gotten these complaints about downtown businesses, we're not talking at 1 in the morning. We're talking, generally speaking, during the evening hours. Most of the time, even before that 9 o'clock hour hits. Now, I'm sure there are times where it's been after 9 o'clock, but generally speaking, I believe it's before that time that we've generated a lot of the complaints. And I think a lot of it has to do with when you're in the spring or fall, the leaves are off the trees and stuff like that. That noise travels a lot further. People are outside more. So just an example, the 2 calls that I pulled up, one was specifically attributed to a downtown business. That call happened to be at 9:16 p.m. The other one that I was able to pull up on this was attributed to just some people playing their own music in the gazebo, was at 6:56 p.m. So we're not talking 1, 2 in the morning phone calls here.
Robin?
Yeah. My concern is that we're moving the area of selective enforcement almost, because you're looking at, there's a particular designation which does not vary downtown from neighborhoods. Where are we on that? I mean, that, somebody can ultimately come in and say, I want you to enforce what the law is. And we're saying, well, that's impractical. Yeah, but that's on the books.
Sure. I don't think I would call it selective enforcement. I think a better way to classify it would be the reasonableness of the noise where it's being heard. So just an example of this is if I'm trying to think of a good example of where, let's say we're on South DePeyster, all the way at the dead end of South DePeyster, and and I can hear a faint noise or a faint sound of music and it's coming from downtown. That's a much different circumstance than if I can hear a party with a DJ from my next door neighbor's house. You know what I mean? It's much louder. So we try to gauge it based on the reasonableness of the noise where the complaint is at. Does that make sense?
It could, but it doesn't. And the reason being because the law says it's applicable downtown just like it's applicable in the neighborhoods. And so that's where we get into the aspect of me saying it appears to be selective enforcement. We're choosing how to use that law, which is on the books differently than we would if in fact it was downtown or in a neighborhood, but the law indicates differently. It's not different. To me, it should be. I mean, I think that's something we're probably going to have to look at and revise. Well, we'll have to talk to Hope to see why that works.
Hope has something to say.
Yeah, I don't think that what he was describing was selective enforcement. What he was saying, that he would go out and investigate, and if the person he's talking about on the end of DePeyster hears a faint noise and the cop is there to listen, and he says, well, that is not unreasonable noise, and that's what this says, that person is not a victim of a crime. Now, the person may be up here closer on DePeyster, that cop might come closer and say, yep, we've got an issue. But police officers are allowed to use their discretion. They're allowed to read the law. He indicated that he goes to these places and he says, listen, we've got a complaint, work with us. And he's only recalled one time in his career that you actually had to give enforcement action, I think you said?
None. I can't remember any times.
None. So I don't think that that's selective enforcement. It's trying to solve a problem within the bounds of the law, and if it cannot be solved, then enforcement happens.
Sure. And
That's what I believe he's saying.
Yeah, I would also go further in that and say this. I mean, in theory, if you live in an apartment building and your neighbors can hear the noise of your TV after 9 o'clock at night, by the letter of the law, it violates our noise ordinance. We don't go out and cite that person. We would take the same action. If you wanted me to step into your apartment and listen to the noise being generated by your neighbor's TV, I would then go knock on your neighbor's door and have a conversation with your neighbor about the reasonableness of the noise of the TV. Similar to what we would do in this circumstance, we would go talk to the staff at whatever establishment downtown was generating the noise and say, we got this complaint and we need you to work with us on this. A very similar approach. We also have, like for instance, we have our party registration program in the city that although those parties may violate our noise ordinance, we give them a reasonable opportunity to abate the noise prior to us taking enforcement action. So this isn't something that we're doing specifically just for the bars. We generally speaking, when we respond to a noise complaint, we gauge that reasonableness right up front. If it's reasonable to do, we will go have a conversation with the premises, the establishment, the house, whatever it may be, generating the noise, if it's reasonable to do, and we'll ask them to quiet the noise down. If it is totally unreasonable, and you have a party with 1,000 people in your front yard and a DJ playing, and it's totally unreasonable, then we generally speaking are quicker to take enforcement action. So it's not uncommon for us to have a conversation with a violator of the noise ordinance and ask for reasonableness and cooperation prior to taking action.
No. Okay. Heidi?
Well, I guess I'm the person that brought this to council this time, but I've been on council long enough to know that the noise ordinance has come up a number of times. However, the downtown, the way that it is right now, is still pretty new in the sense that part of the vibrancy of downtown is that now we have a lot more people living in downtown. And I represent them, and I also represent the businesses. So I've been able to actually successfully mediate between people that live very close to downtown, or we could even say in downtown, and a neighboring bar to look at what's reasonable, and it's usually time of day kinds of issues, not so much the loudness at a particular, the sound level, but it's usually time of day. And that could, people say, it's not reasonable to have loud music impacting me to a high degree after midnight on a weeknight. And I say, yeah, but what I've heard recently that really concerned me, and this is why I brought it to council, because I do think that our noise ordinance might need to be amended to protect the businesses as well as protect the residents, so that it's clear. What concerned me was that I heard not more than one, or not less, I've heard more than once that police said that it doesn't apply to downtown, and now you've clarified that. So it did sound like they weren't willing to enforce it downtown, even when it was really pretty unreasonable, according to some of the stories that I heard. So I just want to make sure that we understand that part of the vibrancy of downtown, part of the reason why it's succeeding, and this is something that we consciously went into when developing the downtown, was saying there's lots of reasons to be downtown, to live downtown, to work downtown, to recreate, to have fun downtown, to come downtown to see people, But, living downtown is a real big feature. There's cities where people don't live downtown and they clear out at 5 o'clock. So it's important to have that sense that we all live in or near downtown and it's walkable to us. So really our downtown has that element of residence in and around. And that sometimes we just have to kind of balance that. And I think it's usually the time of day issue, because people that choose to live in downtown know that they're moving into a noisy area. And they're reasonably tolerant people. So I have to say that sometimes it's on occasion that perhaps a bar has all its windows open and they're playing really loud music, not necessarily live music, and there's residents that are close by, and that can be an issue. And I would like to be able to protect both the bar and the residents in this, and be pretty clear about when and how we enforce things. I'm really thankful that we don't just go in there and shut them down, because I think this is really an issue of mediation and talking about being good neighbors, in essence, and being tolerant neighbors. So that's what I have to say right now.
Thanks. Jerry?
Well, being someone that likes to sit on Franklin Avenue on the weekends, I'm not too old to still do that, and have a beverage with the door and listen to the music and that kind of stuff. But up in my area around the Pioneer Avenue, I can almost hear that music at the same volume as I do on Franklin Avenue. Now, I understand, Chief, what you have on the books to work with. I understand the business people, what they're trying to do. At the same time, we're all the problem, we're all the solution, so there's something here that we need to talk about. I mean, it may be moving your speakers so they aren't headed up 2.5 blocks out of the city of Kent, or turn the volume down after a certain time. Like I said, it's a problem up in that area. I hear the residents all the time ask me, what can we do about it? What can we do about it? And I say, well, we got a vibrant, we're a college town, we got a vibrant downtown, people seem to like it downtown. But once again, they'll tell you, we don't like it 2.5 blocks away from downtown. Just a comment.
Sure. Garrett?
Yeah, Jerry makes a good point. And so does Heidi, but I would also say there's plenty of reasonable people that move next to an airport and then wind up complaining about airplanes. There's plenty of people that move next to an industrial plant and then complain about noise from an industrial plant. So to say that, or make the assumption that because you live downtown, you want to hear loud music all the time and all hours of the night, may be a false assumption. But with that said, I think what we're really trying to do is establish a timeline and or a time that can be better defined so that the bars and the patrons and the Kent Stage, which isn't a bar, I guess, necessarily, but let's just say the businesses can operate and people can enjoy that, but also to have it where the neighborhoods and residents aren't distracted. Wrigley Field has a hard stop at 11 o'clock for concerts. It doesn't matter if you're the Foo Fighters, U2, Pearl Jam, Dead & Company, Lakewood Amphitheater in Atlanta, Georgia. It's the same thing. They have a hard stop at 11 o'clock for live music, and those are in the heart of downtowns. So I think what we need to do is explore a timeline or a time constraint on when live music can be played outside, and we could have differing days on weekends and weekdays, and then maybe you also consider whether it's amplified music or acoustic music that's allowed. And can acoustic music go louder or later on a weeknight? Perhaps that's fine, but I think that's the issue that we need to define. And I think if people know on weekdays, I'm just going to say live music stops outside at 10 o'clock, and then Friday, Saturday, 11 o'clock or 11:30 on one, or maybe 11 on Friday and 12 on Saturday or something like that. Then at least people are aware of when that music's going to stop and have a reasonable expectation of what they're going to get when they're going to get it. And I think that's probably somewhere where we're looking at going. Nobody wants to stop live music. I mean, it's the best, right? There's no doubt about it. But creating reasonable framework of how that can work is I think what we should be looking at and discussing. Like, do we set a hard stop at a certain time for outdoor music?
John?
The one thing that concerns me is, we were all out for Start Medora. We were all out for designated entertainment districts. And now we're saying you can't entertain. It's almost, I used to run a bar and people didn't start showing up till 9 o'clock. 9:30, people start becoming active, and from then till 12:30 or so, I would say it was reasonable. After that, maybe not, because everybody's drunk anyhow. But you want to stop something annoying. I have properties on North Manaway Street that's a fire truck. They swear to God they run up there with the sirens every 20 minutes. I mean, where do you draw the line? You can probably hear the fire trucks from your house too, can't you, Mayor?
Can? Then we know somebody's going to be safe when they get there.
Okay, Mike?
What the business district? How would you define the business district?
Generally speaking, if you're asking me, and I'm not a community development person, I'm just looking at it from the perspective of what I would say is downtown.
With the noise.
Okay,
like street to street,
So I would say Haymaker up to, I guess I would go to Brady, and then DePeister over to probably Gogler.
Okay, because I know, I live on Fairchild, and I can hear the music by the water tower sometimes, not all the time, but I think the leaves on the trees, and I can tell my wife that's the song they're playing, and it's not offensive to me. But there's people in my neighborhood that it is offensive to, but they don't complain. I said, if you don't, I can't, it's. I say there's got to be something like Garrett said. There's got to be a time, because I've got up in the middle of the night at 11 o'clock. Not middle of the night for me. And I've actually drove in search of music, and I found it. But and I said that's exactly what I thought. So I said I don't have a really big problem with it myself.
Robin?
Yeah, I'll kind of piggyback off what Garrett was going to. The issue ultimately for us is the chief had already said, and by using the word selective, maybe that was inartful, I don't know. It's subjective. And there were applications that people go out and they use a subjective criteria as opposed to an objective one, which is the law, what's on the books. Why? But we give more latitude because we understand the vagueness of exactly what's going on as it relates to a business district and how that's to be applied. I sympathize with the business owners, just like I sympathize with the people who feel they're being impacted by the noise. And noise is going to be differently taken in by different people. As Frank Sinatra, the noise isn't that bad as opposed to Def Leppard. So
I hate Frank
Sinatra. Frank and Sam. Okay. And so ultimately, we're going to be looking at, coming back to council, what we're going to consider to be over and beyond the pale. And something that we can adopt, because we're going to have to still leave in the ability of, it seems reasonable, to leave that in the hands of law enforcement officials as to what they're going to determine about what's going on. But if in fact it's a hard and fast 40 feet, and the application is the same downtown as it is in the neighborhoods, somebody's eventually going to say, I want you to enforce the law that's on the books.
Yep.
And we're going to have to come back here now and start dealing with that to try to make things a little more realistic in its application. This is something that we'll be sitting down with the city law director, you, and council, and listening to people who are impacted by it, business owners, to see what works. I don't think it's going to be that easy. I think it's going to be something that's going to be kind of torturous in some ways, but we're going to have to do it, and I think it's appropriate, because we're going to be bumping up against this, because we are trying to do things downtown, but like Garrett was saying, look, man, if this is becoming an area where you're going to have a lot of people living in, we're, going vertical downtown, and we've got apartments coming in, and they're going to be bugged by that. They have to understand you are moving into a business district here. This is going to be a little different than it is if you're living down on the end of DePeyster as opposed to downtown at the top of DePeyster. So this is going to take a while, and I hope that the people in Heidi's area that are impacted, even in mine, because they're going to be all aspects of the community. They're going to be, involved in this overall process. I get complaints now. Matter of fact, I'm one of the complainants. So I wish, we're certainly going to need your input in how we are able to still this down so it's workable for everybody. And I'm hopeful that we're able to do that in a way like we did the flag, that we're taking credit for it.
What's up? Roger?
Yeah, I find it interesting that we went from, this is going to be a positive conversation, that we're going to be torturous, so Mr.
Not necessarily.
I think that unpredictability is what really is problematic with a lot of things. And I think we can all agree that when the state legislature decided to let people shoot off fireworks basically whenever they wanted, it was different than what we were used to. We were used to, fireworks were usually on New Year's Eve, you heard fireworks, and you heard fireworks maybe on the 4th of July, and maybe Labor Day, and that was it. And I think that that's getting kind of what Garrett is saying. I think if there was some predictability to it, in other words, if there were some kind of structure so that people know that they're not going to be hearing music during the weeknight at midnight, if there was some kind of way of structuring the law within the downtown area, that is reasonable. And again, in a positive way, because we really, of course, my bias is I love music, so I play it all the time. But I know my neighbors behind me, I have to ask over the fence every so often, hey, is this okay? All right? And a lot of times they'll say, turn it up louder, but a lot of times they'll say, hey, no. So I think there's some reasonableness there, and I think we got to keep it positive. And I think that our goal here tonight, if I understood it correctly, by Dave setting it, our goal here was to begin the conversation. And I don't think it needs to be torturous. I think we need to look at what's going on. We've got to figure out how do we come to a resolution that everyone can live with. And I think part of it has to be consistency. And we have to help our police in terms of being able to understand what that consistency looks like without being, shackled to a absolute and also not having some kind of guideline. So I think it'd be reasonable to continue the conversation here. And plus, I want to go out and walk the neighborhoods at night. I do that. When people call about complaints, and I get out there. So I'd really like to hear that. I'm curious about what I'm going to hear. And,
Gwen?
Yeah, I guess just to piggyback on that a little bit, I think that I appreciate, Dave, I appreciate your thoughts on it, that this is an ongoing conversation, because I do feel like there are business owners that didn't get a chance to come or don't even know that this is happening that would certainly be very interested in being part of this conversation. So I appreciate the fact that there isn't any immediacy to making a hard and fast rule. I also have concerns about hard and fast rules and setting very strict deadlines, is that then you're immediately opening up the door for exceptions. And there's always going to be exceptions, right? The very first Harry Potter Festival that was tremendously successful went until midnight. Fireworks go till 11. If the Kent State basketball team plays on the West Coast at a really important game and there are watch parties, that's going to go past whatever time. So I think we should be aware of the fact that setting hard and fast rules, that we're going to have exceptions, and that just kind of muddies the water even more. I like reasonable. I like conversations. I like the ability for the reasonable to go both ways. I hear music from my backyard, or I hear noise from my backyard, and it doesn't bother me. Is it reasonable to complain about noise at 4 p.m. or 6 p.m.? I don't know. That's debatable. But so I don't necessarily know that the solution to this is going to be a very strict this time and this time and this time when we got a bunch of clock watchers who are ready to call the police and get somebody in trouble when it's just something that's wrapping up, or maybe it's just an encore, or maybe it's some other thing that's happening that isn't going to last very long, and the police or whoever's on the scene of it can kind of see like, oh, this is actually just about ending now. So that's just my 2 cents to it, but I'm glad, I'm appreciative for the people that express their concerns and the businesses that I did get a chance to talk to, that this is important to them. And I think as a council, we should be sure that the doors is open for communication and their participation as well, since the downtown businesses are a great part of what makes Kent very, very special, and particularly live music. There aren't a whole lot of venues for live music anymore. There used to be all over the place, and they're slowly but surely going away. And one of the things I hear over and over again from visitors who come and spend money in our downtown, who come to the Beatles Fest and all the other music festivals and things like that, is this is amazing. It's so hard to find live music anymore, all different kinds of live music. And I want to make a distinction between live music that an establishment is bringing in from somewhere perhaps far away, or putting together, doing the marketing, this and that. I consider that different from somebody who plugs their amp into the gazebo. I mean, I appreciate their musicality, but it's not the same thing as somebody creating like a great list of bands and promoting it and getting people excited, and people are traveling there to go see it and they're excited about it. But noise is noise is noise, and so I don't want to, I guess it could be a little bit complicated, and I appreciate that we're talking about it now, and I appreciate your thoughts on it as well. Thank you.
Okay. John?
I got a question for the chief. I used to be in a number of places that played loud music, and I always wondered why it had to be so loud that you couldn't talk to the person next to you without sticking your face into their ear. And that was kind of offensive. But do you think something like a timeline where it's mandatory not to shut the music off, but just to turn the volume down would work?
I don't think it's impossible. I think that the biggest thing that I would say is it's, for us, and in terms of enforcement, it's probably going to have to be based on distance from the structure itself, that it can be heard, not so much the volume inside. If you have a very well soundproof structure, and you're able to play your music at the same level all night long, and it's not heard, 30 feet away, then I don't think it matters. That you don't have to necessarily turn your music down. We can't necessarily. We don't use decibel readers and stuff. We're not going to go in and measure the noise inside of your business or inside of your establishment. What we're going to do is we're going to have some sort of a distance we are away from it, where we can measure that distance with accuracy. We have different lasers and stuff like that for traffic enforcement that measure distance as well. So we are going to have to be able to have a hard, fast, this is the distance it has to be, and this is, is it audible or not? And if we satisfy that, then it's either citable or it's not citable. I think that can be risky, honestly, just because, let's use, for instance, the Water Street Tavern. For the most part, I guess, what are you responsible for as the establishment? Are you responsible for the music? Are you responsible for the voices of the people inside? Are you responsible for the voices of the people in your line? What are you and aren't you responsible for, I think, is what's going to really have to be clearly defined if we're going to go forward.
I think, my impression was a lot of the noise complaining is due to outside venues. And keeping that in mind, if the amplifiers were turned down at a specific time, that should turn the complaints down too.
You would think, but I guess the point that I'm trying to make is are you looking to legislate the noise level of an outside venue versus the noise level of an inside venue? And then, are we measuring, based on whether it's an outdoor festivity or if it's an indoor festivity? What would probably, for us, in terms of enforcement, one standard, whether it be indoor or outdoor, one standard based on a distance away from that particular location that's generating the noise. To me, indoor or outdoor doesn't. I don't want to get into the minutia of it, but indoor or outdoor doesn't really help us. If it's disturbing someone and it's being generated at a certain facility, whether that be inside or outside, to me, and to that complainant, it's the same thing. They don't care if it's, like I said, for lack of a better way to say, they don't care if it's at the Water Street Tavern or if it's at Hometown Plaza. They just care that they can hear the music and the noise.
Well, you mentioned that if you got a call to an apartment because someone was playing their TV too loud, you'd go next door and you'd talk to them and tell them to turn the volume down.
Correct.
And that's all I was suggesting.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
But I think he said he does that already. That is what they do, John. I understood you to say, can we actually codify that? And
Yeah.
okay, that's where it gets trickier. I think, because he says we haven't really had to write citations, because most of the time when they have had a complaint, they'll go talk to them, and I'm assuming part of the tactical response is, all right, we'll turn it down, maybe we'll turn it off. I don't know, right? So I think it is happening.
Yeah, generally we've had success in just having conversations with the affected businesses.
Well, maybe just by having this discussion, someone will do it automatically.
Okay, Jerry, and then I'd like to go to the audience, so go ahead.
Just to say, being a townie, music was a big part of this community, but until the last 5 years, it was all inside. You didn't have the outside speakers. You didn't have the outside bands. And I think this is what's making people irritable. And John brings up a good point. What's so hard about turning the volume down a little bit? Just a comment.
Okay. All right. I'm going to open this up to the audience, so if you have something to say, would you please raise your hand and I'll call on you, and then come up to the mic and give your name and address, please. Sir, over here. Name and address, please, for the record.
Edward Lavery, 5790 Horning Road. I actually just moved. I was in 1206 North Manaway Street for a long time, but I've been in Kent most of my life. So this issue is really important to me, not just because I work at a bar downtown, but there's a lot of things that I think all of you have made really great talking points. This discussion, this has actually gone way better than I expected. This is my first city council meeting I've been to. It's just very exciting to be here and talking to each and every one of you and being joined by everybody here. For me, there's a lot, I didn't know that, business downtown had to be enforced as residential areas were. I thought there was a difference between the two, but coming here today, learning that it's all in the same thing, it's good to know. I think I'm a musician myself. I also work at the Zephyr Pub. I'm a bartender downtown. This issue is very important to me because not only coming out of the pandemic and seeing how much that affected our local economy, amongst other things. I think DORA came about, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that was a byproduct of the pandemic, right? So we could still keep people coming in downtown doing stuff, even though we had to constantly change, rules and regulations about how businesses were run. We were just trying to adapt to, a very negative situation that was going on, and, everyone did the best that they could. I think it's very possible, and I know there's going to be a lot of discussions down the road as far as like how we're going to come to a good conclusion about all this, because obviously, the residents are very important, but we also have to remember that, our local economy is very, very important, and especially after coming out of something that negatively impacted not just our local economy and community, but, the entire world, essentially. Live music, especially the rich history of this city, is based in music and so many other things. But music really, it's not just a great thing for the community, but it really is. You can. There's live music events at the Kent Stage and at the university, but having music at the bars or events at Hometown Bank, whatever. That goes right back to, an economic issue. Events and stuff that generates people from coming out of town, or people locally getting more involved. There's so much that goes into it. And the nightlife in Kent, it's very lively, very vibrant, and especially even when kids are out of town, summer break and stuff like that. There's still a lot of people coming downtown. And I just think I think there's reasonable, I think we all know that there's reasonable, things we can come to when it comes to figuring this out. But I think one of the most detrimental things to do right now is to, at least what's been happening to us is we've had to stop playing outside. And to be honest with you, I think that because of complaints we've been getting, that kind of drives people away. That kind of, there's people that want to be outside, when it's nice out, but they also want to go to the bar or they want to do the DORA stuff. Having music and even any, drag shows. We do have drag shows at our bar, all sorts of events and stuff. But having to end that early, or I forget who made the point, but people that are going downtown at night, they're not coming out till 9:30. So I think immediately stopping, especially music when it's nice out, all these things. We have DORA, which I think has been going way better than I expected because we're in a college town. There's all that stuff. I had this list in my pocket of all these different things, but I think everybody here collectively hit a lot of those check marks, for me at least. But we have to consider too, I think, because everyone's been speaking, you know, there are people that live close to downtown, further away from downtown, but where do we draw the line of, you know, not completely sacrificing our local businesses, which are, I can't reinforce how important they are, you know, to our local economy and everything else, but, you know, where do we draw the line of, hey, this is completely unreasonable, and then, hey, I mean, this is a weekend, or this is, you know, there's just too many positives to not only live music, but just any events in general for our city. So that's, you know, I'm very confident, especially, like I said, this is the first time doing this. I'm very confident that, you know, all of you are going to come together and figure out a solution. And obviously, you listen to everybody else here, too, and the turnout. I'm just very happy to see everybody here. Yeah, I'm just looking very forward to seeing what you guys have to come up with. And thank you for having me
Thanks.
up here.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, somebody else? Yes, sir. Name and address for the record, please.
My name is Tony Leota, 433 and a half Carthage Avenue. I'm kind of in a interesting position here because I sold the PA systems to these. I'm also a musician, school of music at Kent. I play in a couple bands. We all have a dB meter on us all the time. In the past half an hour, it's peaked at 82 dB C-weighted, and the average was 62. So
Was it me? Am I a loud talker?
No, it was not you. I'm just mentioning that because it's a tool that, you know, I don't want to say this isn't a suggestion for law enforcement, but I believe they do have decibel recommendations in the statutes. Am I wrong? Incorrect here?
You're right. So.
I don't think so.
No, there's none.
Okay, well, I do agree that space away from the source of noise makes sense, but it being audible is not necessarily the best, I guess, trigger for action. I can hear up to 18 kilohertz. As you get older, your hearing disintegrates, essentially. So people are, everyone's different. They all have different eardrums in their ear working. In regard to music, we all know. We have Joe Walsh, you know, plastered over downtown. I know that everyone can be reasonable and, you know, adhere to rules, but I think we just need rules. And yeah, I guess that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I just jump in there real quick? It reminded me as I listened to a couple of you all, since you're in the industry, if you know of other cities or other places, we're not the only city with live music. I mean, and Garrett even mentioned, you know, Atlanta or some. If you know of some others that you're like, hey, they seem to got it dialed in pretty well, please let us know. We're not ashamed to beg, borrow, and steal from somebody else. So.
11 o'clock now, everywhere. 11 o'clock almost everywhere.
Okay.
It's a Live Nation thing, and they own every venue.
That's interesting.
Okay, name and address for the record, please.
Hello, Jason Messer, 411 North DePeyster Street, the cool end of DePeyster, I might say. So, I really wasn't ready to talk up here, but I do get a great opportunity to travel, all right? I used to come out to Kent to party in the 90s, had a great time, never really imagined that I'd be living in Kent. And honestly, I really would not have bought a house if it was not exactly where it is in Kent. I love being able to call someone and say, hey, air conditioning's not working, click, someone comes out, I don't pay the bill, you know, it's great. But that being said, being in close to downtown, I get to travel extensively. It's great. Around Miami, New York, different places. What draws me in when I am traveling, I don't set an agenda. I'm just not that person. I have commitment issues, okay? So I will walk and I will smell the air and I smell the food. I will listen and I will hear the music in the air. He is correct. Most places have a thing around 11 o'clock, I do believe, right? Chief, when's the last time you gave a traffic ticket based on just you seeing someone going fast? It's usually a radar reading, right? Yes. So I also work in research and development. You have to have quantifiable results. So to me, it would be a decimal amount versus distance from the structure, from the property line. You brought up where the amphitheater is. From the sidewalk, set distance, decibel. You know, you determine what that decibel is. Because to me, something that is loud or something that isn't loud to me could be loud to someone else. Determine that on your own. You know, a good speaking volume that's in this room. Is that what it is at 40 feet? But you have to quantify it. But I have walked downtown. I love walking downtown. I've walked past the Zephyr when there's live music playing. No intention of stopping the Zephyr, and I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. So I'll go in. I've heard the rooftop music on top of the water store. Love it. Like, it's the only rooftop place around for quite a distance. I love a good rooftop bar. And to me, if you kill the music too early based on, I mean, I go by the 80-20 rule, right? So if he can pull up 2 complaints, there's been 16 complaints, all right? So to me, to end it so early or to have something that's so undescript they're right. It will drive people like me that normally would just go down, hang out, figure out where I'm going by what I hear. You would lose that. And to me, that's a little bit of magic about Kent, is going around, walking around downtown, listening, eating food, just doing the thing. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Further? Yes. Name and address, please, for the record.
Hi, I'll try to be short. Michael Buby, 1907 Pilgrim Street. I live in Talmadge, but I do work at the college, and I play at the Zephyr Pub, and I go there a lot for the music scene. And I just want to say something so that you guys keep in mind very 2 important points when considering this. And one is the level of artistry, and the other is the level of community. You'd think with the information age and technology that we'd be becoming more and more close and more connected to one another, but in fact the opposite has been happening, and from the person-to-person level, people have felt more and more disconnected from their communities and more lonely. So I think when you have a space like this, you have to consider that when making decisions about it. My father's favorite thing to tell me when he was a boy my age, 25, well, I'm 27 now, mid-20s, was that he could keep a baseball glove in his car and just drive around and find any pickup game and join it. That really isn't the case anymore. And when you look around and find community events to go to, they really don't exist. The reason I think it's important that I'm in between Talmadge and Akron and I'm speaking here is that there isn't a place like this for me to play live and me to hear live music outside in any area. And so you have to consider that when voting. Sadly, you have to consider the outer area outside of your town. The other one is the level of artistry. I've played at the Zephyr 6 times this year. Every time after me, there's 3 bands. I'm always horribly out of genre. I play sad folk music. I've opened for rap groups, I've opened for techno, I've opened for metal, I've opened for punk, and I love it. But I want to make clear that all of those 6 shows, there's been no repeating bands. which means that 18 other bands have played. And they have 2 to 3 shows a week, never repeating bands in the same week. They have repeating bands maybe twice a month. And that is a high volume of artists who are coming into your town and spreading the word about your town. Even last night, a band from Calgary did not have Kent on the register, and they said it was a miracle that they could find a place to come through and play that would host them, that would give them people that would listen. And I just wanted to impose these things upon you in tonight to get another voice of just another human being who is a music-loving artist. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else? Over here. Name and address for the record, please.
Yeah, my name is Christopher Dumm. I live at 1007 Sackett Ave in the Falls, but I used to live on 517 Franklin, right across from the street from a really noisy train that went through like at all hours of the night, and I dealt with it because I understood that I was choosing to live in Kent. I was making sacrifices in terms of what I wanted in my life and the fact that this was a college town. And I could hear people coming out downtown, right? There were fireworks, there was all sorts of stuff going on, and I understood because I wanted to be in this location. This is what I understood Kent to be and what I understood to offer. I teach at Kent State, so I'm here a lot. I spend a lot of time at the Zephyr. I've been fortunate enough to play at the Zephyr as a musician. There's been a lot of research into the importance of institutions in our lives and sort of like the loss that we're suffering in terms of community because of the institutions. And I just want to sort of drive home the importance of having the Zephyr and music here. I just came from Bell Tower Brewing. I like it a lot, but honestly, if Bell Tower Brewing closed, that'd be sad. I don't wish that, but we have other breweries here. You know, like people could go drink other places, right? We're not losing bars as an institution, right? But if something happened to the Zephyr and this music scene, we would really be losing that institution that we've talked about that's so important to our community. And there are people, the scene in the community that offers to people, I think, is so important. There are people who have been targeted for who they are, for what they believe in, and they find a home at the Zephyr, right? There are people who can be creative about the things that are important to them, and they find a home at the Zephyr through that music. And I just think we really need to consider finding a solution that respects. Of course, yeah, I complain about the train, right? Yeah, I don't want to like hear all these noises at the same time, but also like I can wear earplugs and things like that too, and I understand that, you know, because of where I live, right, these things are going to happen. So I think we just really need to be really cognizant about what we will lose in terms of the whole institution and the vibrancy that the Zephyr offers. And I'm saying like the Zephyr because it's where I go, but there are obviously other places here that we're talking about. But in terms of this music scene and what it offers, I think, yeah, we need to be really cognizant of sort of these, you know, we can talk about measuring decibels. It's hard to measure this community impact, right? But I think if something happened to it, it'd be very palpable and you'd understand the sense of what was lost. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you very much. Mr. DeZato? Name and address for the record, please.
I'm Bruce DeZato. I live at Park Hill. Park Hill is located on Kent's most prestigious and beautiful street, Park Avenue, in Kent's beautiful and most desirable West River neighborhood. I've heard some astonishing things tonight. Imagine calling a train noise. That is music. I'm also astonished, a little bit astonished to hear the police chief say that there is a noise ordinance. Because when I called to make a noise complaint, I was told you can't do anything. The dispatcher told me that. So I came downtown to talk to a policeman to make sure I got the story right. He repeated the same thing. So we've got 2 different stories coming from the police department. We live in a valley. Geography is destiny. That's why there is a Kent. I can lie in my bed at night, and because I know the railroads are out here, I can hear Powder Mill Road. I can hear when he's on Middlebury. I know when the Wheeling and Lake Erie is coming down from up there. You know, I don't need to go on. I mean, but sound travels in this town. Sometimes it's not a real problem, but there are other nights you think you're going to lose your mind. Now, try to visualize how long it would take you to walk from downtown to Davie Junior High School. Now imagine that the noise at Davie Junior High School is about as loud as it is downtown. That you can walk by people's houses and it looks like the windows are kind of moving. Now this doesn't happen all the time. It's a rare occurrence, but it does happen. And while I'm cognizant of the fact that there are people whose lives depend on these businesses, There are also people who have, in our neighborhood, there are people who have little children and babies, and they're trying to put them to sleep at a reasonable hour, and this stuff is awfully loud. Now, I'll leave you with, well, not quite. I'll say this. I think the way to go is I would go with time limits rather than decibel limits. I think you're going to find it a lot easier to enforce. The other thing is, before I close, the last time I talked to you was fairly recently. I think it was 1988 or 1989. I haven't felt the need to be back. You've been running the town pretty well since, but I'm here. And I know there are a number of people in my neighborhood who feel like I do. We don't want to come downtown and make a McGill or a federal case out of it. And most people like the idea. We like where we live. We like, all of us chose to live here. We'd like to stay here. But there is a sense that the scene is changing, that it's getting louder, lots louder, later, more often. And we shouldn't have to go to bed every night praying for rain on the weekend. All right? I'll leave it at that. Thank you for, by the way, one last thought. I could hardly find you guys tonight. I can't wait till City Hall is dead.
We're getting there.
Yeah, it's coming, it's coming.
I could, you know, when you talk about from pillar to post. So, anyway, thank you for listening to us and taking this seriously, but please don't take too long on this. Move this along a little bit because tempers are growing a little short, and it's going to be a long summer, and we wish success to everybody. One last, when I come downtown in the evening, which is not too often anymore, I'm flabbergasted by how many people are downtown. It's like there are two different cities going on here. There's the daytime Kent and nighttime Kent. We want to keep everybody happy, and we can do that. I'm sure we can do that. This is a town of reasonable, tolerant people. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. Anybody else wish to speak? Go ahead. Name and address for the record, please.
Coming pretty soon.
Hi, Josh said, 723 Taylor Street Southwest in Massillon, but I run the Zephyr. I've lived in this town a long time. I've worked at the Zephyr for 14 years. The music scene in Kent is very popular. It's a historical part of this town. I have a lot of people here who are here because they love the music scene in this town. I don't want to piss people like this off. It's loud, I get it. These outdoor shows bring a lot of people into this town, a lot of money into this town, not just to my bar, the businesses downtown where they eat and everything else. Our stuff is inside until you guys figure it out. I promise we won't bother you unless it's coming from out of our doors. But I do think some sort of time limit. The outdoor shows have been wildly successful. The last summer we went hog wild with it, and I know we pissed a lot of people off. We will turn it down a little bit when we are outside before 11 or before 9 o'clock. But thanks for listening and thanks for thinking about everything. But yeah, the bar has I know we've been loud, but it's been great. The music scene can't go away. It won't go away. We're going to keep making noise, but most of it will be inside. But those outdoor shows have been great, and I know it's probably not what everybody wants to hear, but the kids really love it. But yeah, I don't want to piss everybody off, and we don't want to piss everybody off. And I know some people are reactionary and have probably sent you some maybe nasty emails about this whole outdoor situation. We don't want to do that. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anybody else? Name and address, Heather?
I didn't come here with anything to say, but I guess I do. Heather Malarczyk. I live at 7685 Westlake Boulevard. When we talk about, like, I keep thinking of when I go somewhere or when I'm hosting an event for Main Street, when the music stops, everybody leaves. So you think about some of these places with these immense patios, that's going to be the end of that shift, right? So when you're thinking about the Zephyr and the footprint inside and then that whole patio, if there's nothing going on out there, people are probably going to go home. So I think I hear a lot of the time is kind of the magic thing, and I really just want to speak for all of the, you know, the people that are going out to the music are going out to eat and they're doing all these other things and they're coming to events, and they're here, and they're coming from so far away, and they're finding Kent as a cool place to visit and stuff and spend all their money here. So there's a lot to that calculation when it comes to making a decision about what that deadline is. But I just kept having visions of, like, we end an event at 9 o'clock and everybody is gone. Maybe they go to the bars, because then they're gonna play the music and they stay there. So that's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Heather. Anybody else? Yeah. Name and address, please.
My name is Sarah Wilson. I live at 425 Cuyahoga Street. I just like to go to the Zephyr a lot and drink there and enjoy the shows. And I want to say having them inside long term is not super viable. If you've ever been inside the Zephyr, the inside's a lot smaller. The shows are a lot more fun when they're outside. And things have gotten a lot more popular there. It's not feasible to fit all those people inside anymore. So it's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Yeah. Name and address, please.
Jay Geldhoff. I live on Lowell Drive, right across from Davie School. Also in the historic West End neighborhood. I live about a block away from Garrett and Jerry, and I'd like it to be known also that, and I'm slightly older, the music emanating from downtown I can sometimes hear from my house, and the sound of people having fun has never bothered me. And I really hope you guys take into account that I'm sure there's a couple people out there that complain. There's probably a ton of other people that don't and really enjoy what's going on downtown. Thanks.
Thank you. Further? Thank you. Okay. So, Tracy?
Yeah, this seems to be the kind of situation that we had with the food trucks. And I was thinking, can we get like a small group together, like administration and some people from the bars that are doing it and some neighbors to hash things out?
And council people, couple.
Yeah.
Maybe.
That's all.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. I guess that's it on that topic. Thank you very much for coming out. The next topic on the agenda is low-frequency noises.
Okay.
Hope?
Yeah, so if you think we didn't know much about the previous topic, we know even less about this topic. I mean, all joking aside, the low-frequency noise, we looked around the table in the office and said, who has any idea of how to regulate that? And nobody raised their hand. They all stepped back, and Hope was still reading her phone, and she didn't realize everybody stepped back, so she got selected. She's been trying to find, examples of where cities may have started looking into this. Because remember, this is different from noise. Noise has certain standards that are more common, and whether it's audible and distance, like Chief said, or whether it's decibel levels, frequency is kind of a whole new ballgame. It can be very quiet, but annoying, right? And it sort of takes, and it doesn't leave a nice trail always to know where it's emanating from. It's a little different with, obviously, rock music or something, but as we've seen even with Land O'Lakes, there's certainly assumptions about where it's emanating from, but I've heard other theories, even by Mr. Sidoti, that it could be something we're not even thinking of. It could be something different, and because low-frequency noise can travel. It can travel subterraneously, and yeah, I've learned a little bit, so that's about the extent of what I've learned. But we don't have a lot for you tonight, and it's very similar to the last conversation where give us a sense of where you want to go, because we're not really sure how to go anywhere with it. Hope, you want
No, I've looked in Westlaw, I've Googled, I've done everything I can to try to find a state or other community that has regulated low-frequency noise. I cannot find anything. And with the issues we have at Land O'Lakes, I believe that they went out to look for someone to come and test and try to figure out where it was. They had a hard time finding a consultant. This is something, if you want to pursue, you would probably be the very first, if it came to fruition, you'd be the very first community to ever do it. And in that regard, I would, if you want to do it, I think it would be prudent for us to find someone, maybe the company that Land O'Lakes used, someone that's in the business, someone that could even say, this is going to be impossible for you to do. I mean, we might have, they might say you're going to have to buy all the equipment that company had, and it could be very difficult. We need your direction to know where you'd like us to go.
Garrett?
You know, this all seems centered around the Land O'Lakes and the housing back there. So I would suggest, you know, it's good that we take it on a case-by-case basis, because based on what you said and what everyone seems to have found out themselves, is that it's so isolated that to try to put some blanket statement out there, it'd be a waste of taxpayers' money to do that and pay a consultant to do all that. I would suggest we let this consultant that Land O'Lakes has hired. Let's find out what they say. Let's see if they address the problem. And if the problem's addressed, then we don't have a low frequency issue and we're not putting something on the books for something that we don't have an issue for. It's a problem. It's like a solution waiting for a problem, right? And that's not a very good way to govern, I don't think. So I would say let's see what the consultants come back with Land O'Lakes. Let's see what Land O'Lakes tells us. Let's see if they remediate it, and if they remediate, then we're fine.
This actually, I know that Land O'Lakes has, it's timely that it came up, but this is actually one of Tracy's issues that she brought up in January of 21 and March of 23. It was supposed to be separate.
Well, can I ask, what was the other issue with low frequency? I don't seem to recall.
You mean the company, or what was the problem?
No, what was the problem that it came up prior to?
Yeah, the problem was with the low frequency, it goes through houses and it goes through windows, and you can deal with it by putting up baffles and things like that. You can even put up stacks of straw if you want to, but there has to be some mitigation going on, because you've heard cars go by with the bass on the doors and everything, you know, like a and you feel it in your body. I mean, it's very hurtful, actually. I mean, it can.
So, but how's that? No offense, but how is that an issue, right? I mean, that's, you know, so if a car with loud bass goes by once in a blue moon,
no,
I mean, we want to set an ordinance for that?
No, that's just an example of how it feels.
Yeah.
When you have a company that has that going on in 20-minute cycles throughout the night, I mean, for 20 minutes you're sitting there and you're feeling that in your body for 20 minutes.
So are you referring to Land O'Lakes, though?
No, this is with Crawley Tar.
Oh, that's what I was getting at. Okay.
Yes, this is Crawley Tar. And then it cycles throughout the night and through the day also. And what happens with them was they got a new piece of equipment, and the motor, when it would turn on, it would create this sensation, and it's hurtful. I mean, you lose concentration, you lose sleep, so it's a very physical reaction to it that's not a positive thing. And there was another one. I had another situation where a person had a motor on their hot tub, and it put out this low frequency also that was disturbing the neighbors. So it's not just an isolated incident. I mean, and I don't know whether it's because they have a different kind of motor that they're producing now, and that this is also happening with Smithers, but because it's such a small frequency. I mean, I deal with it every day from Smithers. It's such a small frequency that I can deal with it. But it comes through the house. If I stand outside my house, I can't really sense it, but if I'm in my house, the house amplifies it. And so I can feel it. I mean, and I think it's just going to become more and more prevalent, because I believe that there's a different kind of motor that they've put out that's creating this thing.
Robin?
Yeah, while not the same thing exactly, it almost is exactly what's going on down there. I've been out and listened to, and I was out with an officer, and we listened to the fan, which is on top of the building, I guess, which exhausts whatever's in there. And we could go down there, we would hear it. I mean, it wouldn't be anything really big to people who are not really that focused on it. I mean, other people are more affected by the train that goes by, or what's happening down on 261. But let me tell you something. the people there, it almost seems like that's exactly what happens, is that whatever sound is coming over from the plant is being amplified in those homes. And it creates a situation where the people are very impacted by, some more than others. It's a uniqueness to it. I don't know ultimately, but I agree on the situation with the noise consultant to wait to hear what they come back with. But that low frequency noise is impacting people who live down there in different ways, based, I think, on location, and they're getting a more amplified sound of where they're living based on the topography that they exist in. So I'm willing to wait and see what transpires with the noise consultant, but I'm also thinking we need to jump on something now to find a way to muffle what's going on at the top of that building. If there's a way that we can help get a kind of financing capability to help that plant get something there. I don't know what they're going to come back with, but I know the residents down there are at their wits' end about it. And it's almost exactly what Tracy had brought up way back when. And now in my ward, that's what they're dealing with now. Roger has actually heard it. I've heard it too, but not to the degree that the people down there who live in that area have been affected by it. But they are very impacted by it. And so I'm very impacted by it. And all of the at-large councilmen should be very impacted by it. And we should be working on a solution, because whatever they come back with, that's still going to be stuck on us to try and deal with. If that plant says, we didn't find anything, I believe that the low frequency situation is something that we have to deal with. If not now, we're going to have to deal with it
Point of
later.
order, just, I'm so sorry, but I'm getting, this is specifically about the hot tub motor and another industrial motor. This isn't about Land O'Lakes. I'm sorry, just point of order, just to stick on the topic, just of Tracy.
Yeah, I said that. I mean, the original motion, actually, and I even feel like Gwen may have asked during the motion, somebody asked and said, hey, this is not going to be a Land O'Lakes discussion, right? And I think Tracy said, I agree. No, it's a separate, those are two separate issues.
Well, then I apologize.
Yeah, I should have called point of order. I didn't.
Well,
but it still all goes together.
That's what I was thinking.
It does,
But
and you brought it up in your initial.
But we're not gonna. We didn't advertise for Land O'Lakes tonight. There's no Land O'Lakes people here. I really don't want to. We've been very good about sticking with those neighbors and not.
I apologize.
Let's keep on track. And tonight was just where this is brand new. Cities aren't doing this. Are you wanting us to try to proceed on a more like policy level, or do you want to do what Garrett's sort of describing? For the most part, we've handled case by case. Crowley Tar fixed theirs on a case by case. Land O'Lakes is at least trying. We'll see if they fix it.
Probably Tar fixed theirs.
Maybe I'm wrong then. Tom Wilkie said that they invested they changed something, invested something, and it fixed it.
All right, nobody told me that.
So the question may be, is the case by case kind of knocking on their door, calling them and saying, is that enough? Or do we need to try to be more policy oriented, which gets us into an area where Hope's saying, I have not much to go on and we don't have staff, so we're going to create a new division, like 2 or 3 inspectors who are trained in that kind of technology. I don't know. That's what I'm trying to get. Where are you as a council?
Okay, well, I'm going to let Gwen go.
Okay, good.
So speaking just to this, after reading the Hope's memo, I'm content to let this go. I don't want to spend taxpayer dollars trying to create a science or discover a science or a methodology to track this. I think if we're able to handle it case by case, if our code enforcement officer can kind of handle it, if we're getting complaints based on that, I'm content with that right now. If there are new motors that are coming out that are generating some sort of nuisance noise like that, I think that we'll see more cities and more technology and more ways to measure that. And as soon as we do discover that, I think it's something that we can act on at the time. But for now, I'm content to just let this go.
Tracy?
Well, my question is, so far we've had companies that have been good neighbors and have been willing to deal with it. What happens if we come across a country that's not a good neighbor? For example, maybe Crawley Tar wasn't interested in helping anybody out. I mean, what would we do then?
Good question.
So I would say, let's continue investigating this and see if we can get something.
Roger?
Well, I really think that I hate to sound like an educator, but it's about the science. And some very, very bright, intelligent people are sitting around this table, not including myself. Okay. Really, it can't grasp the science because it is pretty complex. I wish all the band members were back here because they could talk about harmonics, right? And you could talk about dissonance in terms of sound, and you can talk about actually the air that gets the low amplitudes and how the air changes on speakers and all that stuff. They know all that stuff. The fact of the matter is that I agree with Garrett that I don't think we should do anything right now until we learn. We need to learn about this stuff. I don't think any of us have a handle on it. I know, Robin says that I've experienced it. I have. I didn't believe it until I experienced it multiple times walking that neighborhood where you could walk 20 feet and all of a sudden it just kind of hits you. And and then you walk 20 feet more and it's
Point of order.
No,
We're not talking about Land O'Lakes.
No, I understand, but what I'm trying to say is that I don't understand it. And I don't think any of us understand it. So how do we legislate? How do we write a ordinance when we don't even understand it? I would prefer, let's take some time. This is new. It's going to happen. And that's what you're asking, right, Dave? Yeah. My take on it is that I understand we may end up having to deal with it, but I really think we need to gather as much information and understand it before you can write legislation. It makes it, yeah. That's the important issue.
I agree, yeah.
And I think right now it is so new, it is so complex, and it's frustrating that it's that complex that we can't wrap our heads around it, but it's actually happening, in my opinion. So we need to just keep working at it in terms of gathering information. That's my 2 cents.
Heidi?
Well, yes, there are some elements that are kind of not, that we don't have codified, but we have this long list of stuff that people aren't supposed to be doing after a certain time, for it to go to another property level. And one is noisy machinery. No person shall maintain, run, or operate any steam, gas, gasoline, or other engine, boiler, press, machine, or other apparatus so constructed or operated as to make any unnecessary noise.
I don't think anyone would think that low frequency is unnecessary noise. I think they would think it's unnecessary. It gets in you.
Or vibration.
Okay.
Maybe we could add that to the, this is the key, to the annoyance and discomfort of the people of the city, except in the course of making an emergency repair and for weather necessitated activity.
So let's say I go over to Garrett's house and I'm a cop and he's telling me.
Happens all the time.
Hardy and too hardy.
How is a cop supposed to know, especially if they are surrounded by maybe more than one factory or business or something? How is that person supposed to know? Where do you think this is coming from, Garrett? And he just picks a place and we go over and charge that person?
Well, it has to be clear. I mean, you have to have a perpetrator. And that this is part of the noise, already that's an unlawful noise.
So who's the perpetrator?
Well, you can't.
Well,
You can't make a citation without one, whether it's,
Isn't commercial
you
and
have to make a
industrial totally
determination.
different? Yes.
Not necessarily.
The noise ordinance has, there covers all of them.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I thought it was different.
I think though with the code enforcement, the thing that Hope's getting at is how to know your source with the low frequency.
Correct.
Because it travels.
All the code enforcement was looking for you, Tracy, this is not comfortable because it travels. So there's always you can pointing to something, but it may not actually be the source. And that's why it's what Hope found, it's not regular.
Robin?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to get Gwen upset here again. But the reality is we're putting the cart before the horse when we get into enforcement. We're trying to educate ourselves, I thought, on exactly what the implications of low frequency are. Now, is it important for us to be proactive or reactive? And without getting far afield on this, I feel, based on my position right now and the impact in this unnamed area that we're not going to discuss, is that there being people who feel impacted. I would like to know, as their representative, what the implications of low frequency noise are. And if we have to be proactive on it, I'm there, as opposed to reacting to something down the road that we find out has very broad implications. I think what we really have found out tonight is what we don't know already. Now I think we should know something.
Mike?
I said, looks to me like we're looking for a teacher to teach us what's
Maybe,
going on
yeah.
here. And I think that's what part of what Garrett said in the beginning is let's see what they find out and try to build off.
Well, and I go back to, sorry for interrupting, but I was sitting here, not daydreaming, but thinking, I think what Hope said may be the best solution to start with. And maybe we talk to that consultant that's a professional in this field. Start there. And if that person can give us information, irrespective specifically of the company that shall not be named, but if this person goes around the country to deal with low frequency noise, maybe they want to know places that have done stuff that we just haven't been able to find, or maybe they can give us some order of magnitude. Yeah, you could do this easily with this $50 piece of equipment, or they say, or it's going to take a fleet of 3 people with all this equipment. I don't know. None of us have any idea. But so maybe that's one of the next steps is bringing that person in if it's after we do a little due diligence on them or someone like them.
John?
I you just wonder about the parameters, and we're not trying to create a vacuum around Ken, are we? Now, one example I have, it must be low frequency, and I don't know which rail it is. It's either out by Powder Mill Road, or it crosses 59, or it's going to Ravenna. But certain atmospheric conditions arrive. Those trains go through there, and this vibration goes right into my body. I mean, where do you stop?
Heidi?
Got that, Jack?
What's that?
You got that?
Yes.
All right.
Heidi?
I'll give another example. That we could call it loud, but we talked about people playing their bass. And I actually went to court to support some of people in my neighborhood who had been bothered by this bass. And it wasn't the sound that bothered them. It was the feeling, the shaking of the windows, just that disruptive physical experience that occurred sometimes several times a day within our neighborhood. And the judge found against this person. So the judge agreed with the people that were complaining about this situation. And so there is some precedent that it bothers people. It's a health and comfort, well, this is annoyance and discomfort of the people in this unnecessary noise clause, but I think it is really the physical, the vibration, and it would be really good to hear more about what this does, what the harms are, and what we could do about putting it into our existing noise ordinance, perhaps, in some way, so that it could be used as a tool in instances where people aren't willing to work it through. So yeah, that was a situation where that person was not willing to stop that behavior. People ran out after this person saying, "Stop! You're driving me crazy." And we know one of those people, but it did bother lots of people within our block and our neighborhood where it happened frequently.
So that's fundamentally one of the questions, right? People have recourse on their own. And is it appropriate for the government to be the recourse agency, or should the court process?
She was saying it was a criminal case.
They used, yes.
Yeah.
They were cited under the noise ordinance
and
by our police.
And it's because the bass is loud. I mean, I know what it does to you, but the bass is loud. And was that in a car?
Yes.
Okay, that's a repeat offender, isn't it? And here's the thing, we knew the source. That's all I'm saying is
Correct.
I think that our biggest issue would be the source, especially when there's no bass or loud noise behind it.
Right.
And it's just the...
Right. And if you don't have a perpetrator, you can still continue to investigate, but how do you go about doing that? How does the city go about doing that?
Right.
Is it expensive? All these factors that you were talking about, we should probably get more information about.
Yeah.
But in the case of that company that shall not be named, those residents were advised early on by Hope that you certainly have recourse on your own. I mean, so you can take them to court. And the question for us had been, is there enough for the city to put its name to that case, so to speak, or get involved, and still protect the public good and public dollar, so to speak, and not a capricious kind of lawsuit, or you know what I mean? Like it's got to have facts, it's got to have evidence, and that's where it starts to get in that. Well, we think the shaking is coming from, and that's where it gets tricky. That's all I meant to say. Yeah, you see how hard this stuff is. It's sort of like we've dealt with this, right? And I think you would agree, maybe not, but we always say the hardest problems for us to solve are neighbor-to-neighbor problems. They're just, they are so hard. We tried it, remember the smoke when it was, people had backyard bonfires, pits or whatever, and that became a hot issue. We had this room full of people saying, my wife has asthma and I have a right to be able to miss my backyard. This is similar, it's just smoke versus noise. And it's stressful. I don't know if you sense the stress. We feel stressed because we do want to solve problems. But man, we also can't overpromise to you that we can do something when, man, we're not sure yet what we can do or can't do. Sorry.
Okay, I'm going to the audience. Does anybody from the audience have anything to say? Do we have some sort of guidance for administration here? Garrett?
I would just suggest we let this thing go until we let it go, and I would suggest we let this go at this point in time.
If that's a motion, I'll second it.
Comments?
Motion.
We have a motion on the floor. Comments? Heidi?
I'm going to vote against that because I think that it's come up enough that we need some kind of guidance. So I would prefer that we educate ourselves further as a group and then we can decide whether to let something go or not.
Roger?
Yeah, I don't think this precludes us continuing to get more information, Heidi. I think, I'm going to support the motion because I think this is something that is going to come up, and it's going to come up, and it's going to come up, and that we will continue to educate ourselves. I think that we've given clear direction to our administration that we want more information. We would like to have some people come in and help us understand this, because I'd like everyone to experience it. I'm sure someone could put together seriously, could put together a sound machine where you could actually feel it and not even hear it. And I think that those are the types of things that I'm going to support the motion.
Mike?
Maybe you used the wrong words, Garrett. Just let it go means to let it go. You know, I mean, maybe if it was let it go with continuing with the
we're gonna
research. He's gonna, yeah.
We're
Well,
going to
yeah.
gain information from the report
But
that's
that's not what
generated
let
by
it
the
go
company, right?
means.
From that, right.
You know, but that's
right.
not what let it go means. That's where we're coming up with the, so, okay. But
Okay.
we're gonna continue to get information.
Tracy?
Yeah, I'm not going to support the motion either, because I agree with Mike. I think it's the wrong terminology used.
Robin?
Let's change, we're just going to change it.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to support the motion. First off, there's conflict there because it's brought up about getting something based on what's going on someplace that we not even discussing tonight. So I'm a little confused about that. But having said that, if we did go down that road, that's not letting it go. That's waiting until we get additional information.
Yes, it does have to be.
To make a determination about where we stand and what this kind of means. So if that's your motion, to put it in abeyance until if we get the report from this unknown company that is working on this issue with this unnamed neighborhood, then I would support that, because that would be moving us in a direction to deal with something eventually.
John?
Well, I'm going to support the motion where Garrett wants to let the administration go and further investigate the results.
Didn't say that.
Is that what you meant, Garrett?
Well, if somebody could make a friendly amendment to that, I mean.
Or we'll do it anyways. We'll just do it.
That's what I was trying to do, but I
Move
thought
that-
I'll vote on the
And
other
move to
one.
amend the
John?
motion.
Okay, John? What are you going to amend?
I want to amend the motion that Garrett made to change the terminology to say that to let the city pursue the information at the sources they see fit and come back to us with the results.
Second.
Okay, and that's second.
Now we got to vote on the other.
Got to vote on the original motion.
On the amendment.
On the amendment. Okay, all those in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Now we can vote.
Now
on
we
the
can
amendment.
vote. On the
motion
original.
amended.
As amended. We're going to vote on the motion as amended. I'm tired. You realize this is the
Aye.
second committee in
Aye.
a row that I've...
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Aye.
Second committee in a row that I've taken. I've been on for 2 hours.
So, further comment. It wasn't worded well, but I think the point is that we're going to gain information from this resource. We don't need to hire somebody and spend the taxpayer money now, as Gwen made such a good point of. Let's find out what that information is. And the last thing I would say is that putting something on the books just to put something on the books isn't going to help us, because when somebody says, well, it's on your books that there's a low ordinance violation, we still haven't defined it. So just taking action to create, just for the sake of saying we did something, doesn't really solve anything unless you have data to back that up.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go to the next...
Come on, Joe.
Oh, Joan, that's good.
Should
Joe,
be easy.
Request to accept bicycle helmets.
Okay, because we can't have enough bicycle-related topics. I'm here tonight to ask you respectfully to allow the Health Department to accept, through a grant from the American Academy of Pediatrics, 72 bicycle helmets. These come in various sizes for children's heads, and we are going to give them away at the June 24th Health Fair at the Historic South End at the Rec Center, and if there's any left over from that, we'll give them away at Heritage Fest.
Okay.
So.
Maybe I ought to give them all to council.
Anybody? Any comments? Anybody from the audience? Okay,
Move to approve.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I hope Joan's not.
Thank you.
Dave.
That ends the health
Oh, you
department.
sat through this.
Dave Coffey.
Yeah, you're the new Dave Coffey.
I'm going to move an executive session to discuss boards and commission appointments and employees' evaluation.
Second by John. Call the roll.
Thank you,
Mr. Amrine?
Yes.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg? Yes. Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Yeah, those helmets could solve both the noise
Give them a couple
Yeah.
minutes to clean out the hall.